So what I'll do is kind of go through this pretty quickly and just stop me at any point in time that you would like, and we can talk about things more. So we'll keep this real informal today, but I'm really touching on a book that I published late last year called The Business Builder. And we did a lot of research for that book. So what I'd like to do today is go over some of that research. And again, if you got questions and thoughts, comments, just break right in anytime. But I'll move along pretty quick on this thing. And Scott, I'll make sure I get a PDF of this to you afterwards. If anybody wants a PDF, just drop a note in the chat to Scott or email him afterwards, and you'll have all these slides. That will assuage my conscience for going so fast through these slides, okay? All right, so strap in, here we go. We're going to talk about this research first that we did. And we're going to look at some unforced errors that business leaders make. So the notion here is there's a lot of things we can do as a business leader, but there's a lot of things we should just stop doing that will really help our growth. And so we'll talk about those things at the end as well. Now, what we were looking at in this research was strong, profitable, sustainable growth. That's the goal. Customers respect you, the active investors get active somewhere else. You avoid the yo-yo financials, no recurring layoffs. You make a difference. And of course, best of all, you irritate your competition. But how do we get to this profitable, sustainable growth? What are some of the drivers? And what are some of the things we should stop doing that are blocking that growth? So here's the survey. We had 654 business professionals respond. Lots of different companies, and these were some pretty big companies. You can see it's many of them over $5 billion, mostly publicly traded, but a fair bit of privately traded as well. Very, very heavy in North America with a pretty solid dose in Europe as well. And very heavy in B2B, just a few B2C folks there, but very, very heavy in B2B. And so we had a lot of experience represented by the respondents. And you can see we were checking for 3 levels: individual contributor, middle manager, and senior leader. And we found the results, the responses from individual contributors and middle managers were so close that we were able to group them together. So in a lot of the research you're going to see us comparing the responses from senior leaders to subordinates. Now, I should tell you, all the questions weren't about how are the subordinates doing. All the questions were about how was the senior leadership team doing or the company itself doing, okay? So first of all, we wanted to find out how fast our company was growing. That way, we would be able to compare the faster growth companies to the slower growth. And yes, this is all self-assessment. We don't have a way of checking this. But again, pretty big sample size, and the data looked pretty solid. So we asked how much senior leadership behavior impacts their growth. And as you can see, almost half said it was really significant or a great impact. And so what we're going to do now is explore a little bit more to see why this impact was the way it was. Let's just check into that. So here are the 6 areas we explored, beginning with job description. So we asked what was the primary passion of senior leaders? Was it driving organic growth by delivering differentiated value to customers? Was it improving operational efficiency? Was it looking good to investors? Or was it pursuing mergers and acquisitions? Now, we added these labels after the survey. We didn't think too many senior leaders would say, sign me up, I'm a decorator, right? So we applied these afterwards to avoid bias. And so let's take a look at these 4 categories. I mean, if you think about it, every company was founded by a builder. They were delivering some kind of value to customers. And these folks are really focusing on customer needs, differentiated new products, and reliable growth. That's a builder. Now, the remodelers are actually doing some very good work. Quality control, efficiency, productivity, it's good stuff. Now, the problem is if we're not also creating something new, then it's a race to commoditization. Then we've got the decorators, and they're boosting curb appeal. It's all about the quarterly financials. They're engaged primarily in a spectator sport. They're not really changing the company in a meaningful way, but they're looking good. And by the way, it's fine to look good. We're just saying maybe that shouldn't be your primary passion. And finally, you've got realtors. They're focusing on mergers and acquisition, and it's really the work of others' hands, changing hands. And if they don't know how to grow the business, it becomes a house of cards. Now, to be really clear about this, it's not wrong to remodel and work on productivity and efficiency and quality. It's not wrong to have good investor relations and look good to your stockholders. It's certainly not wrong to make wise acquisitions. These are all really good things. But the problem can be if those are the main passions and we lose that passion for delivering value to customers. And that's what we're going to explore in a little more detail now. So we asked people, what was your primary passion? And about half of the senior leaders said, sign me up to be a builder. And we asked the subordinates what their senior leaders' primary passion was. And they said, yeah, about a third of them said, my boss, my top boss is a builder. And so the question now becomes, what does it mean if maybe only a half to a third of these folks are really doing what the builders, the original founders of the company were doing, which is driving organic growth by delivering differentiated value. A brief commercial here. If you want to get into this research in a lot more detail, it's all in Business Builders. And there's also a free 5-minute assessment you can take. You could jot this down, ruabusinessbuilder.com, and there's a scale. And it's not like anything less than 100 is bad. It's just kind of gives you a sense for how much of that builder thinking is innate in your thinking today. So that's the Business Builders. Now let's get back into the research. We wanted to know what the first duty of a business leader was. And our belief is this: leave your business stronger than you found it. Now, there's other things a leader has to do. That's not the only thing, but we think that's the primary thing, number one duty. And we believe they failed if they haven't done that. And here, let me give you an example of that. There's a wonderful book. This is kind of mind-boggling. I mean, Jack Welch was named Manager of the Century by Forbes magazine, of the century, right? And he did some amazing things with the stock price. But now books like this are being written. How Jack Welch gutted the heartland and crushed the soul of corporate America. I don't want a book subtitled about me like that. So he did some great work on the stock price, but his legacy was mass layoffs. His employees called it a campaign against loyalty, a lot of offshoring, financial engineering. But think about this for a moment. The one metric he was pursuing for 20 years, it kept going up, up, up like a rocket ship. But 20 years later, the same time period after, it was just a fraction of what he had driven it to in its peak. So in some ways, it was an illusion. So by any measure, he did not leave his business stronger than he found it. So we also wanted to talk more about the business goal, because that relates to this duty of a business leader. So we asked people what the primary business goal was. Is it maximize shareholder wealth? Is it beat competitors' performance? Is it grow by meeting customer needs? Is it meet the needs of all stakeholders, or heck if I know? Okay, so those were the options we gave them. Now, remember, we had some companies who reported they were growing faster than competitors. In that case, about half of them said we're going after meeting customer needs, but still a third of them were saying maximize shareholder wealth. The companies growing slower, 70% of them said the top goal is maximize shareholder wealth. Now, we think the number should be 0%. Now, why is that? Well, maximizing shareholder wealth is a lovely result, but it's a lousy goal. You want your goals to be actionable and inspiring. And they're going to be both stumped and bored if you say, guys, we got to raise earnings per share this quarter. Like, what do you do with that, right? And so if we dig a little deeper into the actual dynamics of financial investing, we can see the fallacy here. So just imagine for a moment, you have a company that has a PE ratio of 20, price to earnings, stock price to your earnings that year, which is not an uncommon PE ratio. So if you had $1 billion of earnings this year, that means your market value of your company, the whole value of your company is $20 billion. So that now, but wait a minute, how did we get to that 20 billion? What's driving that? I mean, only 5% of it came from this year. How did we get to 20 billion? What's the other 19 billion coming from? Well, it's only one thing. It's investors' expectations of future growth. It's what they think you're going to do after this 1 year of earnings. If they think everything gets shut down and gets dissolved and there's no value, it's only worth $1 billion, right? That you cranked out. So it's really their expectations of the future growth of the company. So paradoxically, if the management team fixates on the 5% this year, and that distracts them from doing stuff to impact the future, that's what's going to drag down the value of the company. So the value of the company this year is a little bit superficial. It's more a measure of speculation and investors' mood and so forth. So that's why it's unfortunate when leaders focus on that. What they should focus on is what's that $19 billion? What am I going to do in the future to build that up? So let's take a look at this. Imagine for a moment you are running a 10,000 meter race, okay, 25 laps around, okay, and you want to win this race. But interestingly, there is a spectator in the stands that has bet on your time for lap number 17. He doesn't care about anything else. All he cares about is lap number 17. So here's my question. Are you going to sprint lap 17 and sacrifice your entire race so he can win his side bet? Well, that's what a lot of business leaders are doing today because the average stock holding period is less than 6 months. So you've got a lot of people who are just doing side bets on your company. They care not a fig for the long-term viability and success of your company. But sadly, that's where a lot of leaders are sacrificing the longer race. Really, they have a higher duty than this. So if the goal should not be to maximize shareholder wealth, what should the main goal be? Well, you may have a better one than this, but if you don't, let me suggest this. Understand and meet market needs better than others. The shorthand for this would be market-facing innovation, delivering value to your customers in a market. And it's not inconsistent at all with Peter Drucker's thinking. The purpose of a business is to create and keep a customer. He went on to say there's only two functions in business, marketing and innovation. All the rest are costs. So I don't think we're far off saying market-facing innovation and understanding and meeting market needs better than others. So it's what your company's founders did, right? And it's really what builders do today. So let's now move on to the time horizon here. So we asked questions about how often does your company implement near-term cost controls, spending freezes, travel bans, hiring delays, and so forth. And once again, let's start with the faster growth companies, pretty balanced. About 49% of them said these cost controls were, is about right. But more of them said it was too often than said not enough, even here. Now, when you come over to the slower growth companies, 56% said this is too often. They see way too much overuse of these cost controls. And so this brings up the growth dampening second order effect. So leaders need to kind of process first order and second order effects. Let me just show you how this works. So you change a system and you have a first order effect, right? But there are more dominoes that tip afterwards, and we're often not paying attention to the further dominoes. So here's an example. earnings aren't looking too good. We got to meet that target. Let's freeze spending. Okay. Okay, but that slows down dozens of projects as teams waited to run outside lab tests, hire technicians, interview customers, and so forth. Now, those delayed projects will delay future growth, which will lead to poor earnings growth. And now what do we do? Do we freeze spending again? So this is a trap that many businesses fall into. I call this first domino fixation. They're fixated on the first domino and they're just not thinking about the future dominoes that are going to tip later. Now, here's a really odd thing. Let me ask you, feel free to unmute if you've ever heard this. Have you ever heard anybody in a business review saying, "Oh, guys, I know why we're struggling. It's all those crazy spending freezes we did the last few years." Have you ever heard that? I've never heard that. So I call this first domino amnesia. So this cannot be a good thing if leaders fail to look ahead to foresee the impact of their decisions because of first domino fixation, and they fail to look back far enough to understand the cause of their problems due to first domino amnesia. So anyway, you can review this with your senior leader when they're in a good mood. Boss, do you have first domino fixation? How about first domino amnesia? Let me know how the conversation goes if you do that, okay? Now, we know from research that appeared in Harvard Business Review that long-term behavior, in fact, does lead to more success, more revenue, more earnings, more higher market cap value of the company, and more job creation. So it really does work. Now, even though that's true, and it's been published, it's been out there, yet many leaders continue to hit the brakes on growth with these steps. Now, some near-term measures may be called for, but the sad fact is some businesses would grow faster if their leaders just stay home and did nothing, because the actions they're taking are actually slowing down the growth of the company. You can mention that to leadership team too, if you want. Here's a really startling thing. 36% of subordinates overall said near-term cost controls were overused. And guess what? Their leaders, they were even more upset with it. So maybe leaders feel like they're in this trap that they've just got to perform in the near term. But even in their heart of hearts, they go, yeah, this isn't right. So let's take a look at initiatives now. What are the things we work on? Is it market-facing innovation? Is it exploratory innovation? Think of this as technology development that leads to product development. Is it marketing and sales capabilities, training for them, quality and productivity improvements, mergers and acquisitions? What are some of the initiatives we could allocate resources to? And so we found a fairly balanced, segmentation of these different initiatives. Only 24% of the resources are aimed at market-facing innovation, with another 16% at giving the capability for that innovation. I don't know what the right number is, but I have gotten a sense that many business leaders don't see market-facing innovation as something different, as something special. And I believe they should. And here's why I say that. Let's imagine we go back to our original statement. We want to deliver growth that is profitable and sustainable. Let's say we do productivity improvements. Will that check the boxes? Well, no, productivity isn't even about the top line, right? It can be profitable. And at a certain point, you reach a point of diminishing returns. I mean, you got a lights out factory. What do? It's all robots. Okay, so it's good, but it's not going to help you with growth that's profitable and sustainable. What about quality? Pretty much the same thing. Now, you might grow a little faster because you're known as a great quality company, but frankly, that was like the 1980s and 1990s. It's pretty much a price of entry anymore. What about cost reductions? Well, no, those don't impact the top line at all. And so it's kind of like productivity. It can't even be worse if it's not done well. Sales training is really good because that definitely can drive growth and it can drive profitable growth. But is it sustainable? If we're not delivering new value to our customers, after a while, our customers will buy from somebody else's well-trained sales force. Mergers and acquisitions can absolutely affect growth, and it can be profitable. But once again, if we don't know how to grow it through market-facing innovation, we're building a house of cards. It's really only market-facing innovation that's going to drive the profit, the top line, do it in a profitable fashion, and there is no point of diminishing returns. You can continue to understand customer needs, which will always evolve, and you can always keep going. So my point is, if a company is really serious about profitable, sustainable growth, they really need to treat market-facing innovation differently than these other initiatives. As Stephen Covey said, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. So if you hear somebody say, well, last year we implemented productivity and this year we're going to do market insight for new product development, well, sorry, that's not really the right way of doing things. You need to always keep market-facing innovation as the main thing. So let's close on deliverables now. How do leaders balance delivering results versus building capabilities? So imagine you want to climb El Capitan, all right? Good luck with this, 3,000 sheer foot cliff in Yosemite. But you don't have the right footwear. You don't have any climbing skills. You got some flabby muscles, I'm sorry to say. But that's okay because you know what? You don't have any capabilities, but you really want results. How's that going to work for you? Right? So can we think of any human endeavor where the champions did not first build their capabilities and then go after results? I can't think of any. But business is a little bit of an aberration because there are some business leaders out there who think they can just focus on results and that's going to work out well for them. So what we want to do is figure out how this balance is playing out. In companies growing faster, as you can see, it's pretty decent balance here. But when we looked at the companies growing slower, this is the most out of whack data we had in all of our research. The slower growth companies, they were really focused on near-term results and not very focused on long-term capabilities at all. Let me just share a quick story on why I see this as a problem. So I'm going to go back to about 25 years ago when I was working inside of a pretty good sized chemical company. And we had a really sharp executive. The CEO was able to look at a thick stack of spreadsheets and zoom in on the problem. And we all hoped it was somebody else's business because the interrogation that followed was not pleasant. Okay. So we had one of these all-day financial review meetings and we're leaving. And he asked me, well, what do you think, Dan, of that review? And I said, well, it was okay. But it kind of reminds me of my first job as a night shift foreman watching over a rubber extruder. Of course, I had to explain that, right? So I said to him, I said, well, my job was to look at that extruder die. And if anything was wrong, I needed to go check out the feed hopper. Because if it wasn't in spec, I wasn't going to be able to exhort it to do better by just standing at the extruder die and talking about it. I had to go see what was going in the feed hopper and fix it there. So I said, boss, we were looking at things and they sounded like intelligent conversations, but we couldn't impact any of these. The only impact was done years ago when we launched products that either were not good in our customer site, valuable. So I said we were largely in a spectator sport, and what we need to do is spend more time in a participant sport. So he looked at me and said, "You're fired." No, that didn't happen. I think he kind of shook his head a little bit. I'm not sure. It was years later before I got fired, and even then I asked to get fired, but that's another story. So what we want to do is spend less time reviewing these results and spend more time building the growth capabilities. And they could be different things for different companies. Interviewing skills, business case development, multifunctional teams, R&D capabilities, you name it. But we need to understand what those capabilities are. So let's close this out by, well, what are some practical things we could do? Oh, before we do that, one quick one. You might be saying in all rights, yeah, but is my company different than those in the survey? And the answer is probably not. It didn't make a difference if it was B2B versus B2C. It didn't really make a difference if the company was selling services or physical products. It didn't matter what part of the world. This part was really depressing. I thought that the privately held companies would do much better publicly, but they didn't. It was very depressing. And then the one exception was this, the size of the company. Okay. And so when the company was quite small, look over on the left here, there's a fairly decent balance between long-term capabilities and near-term results. But whoa, look what happens when you get to the $2 billion range and up, the last two on the right here. The subordinates had thought their companies were way out of whack in terms of not enough long-term capability building. So check that one out if you're in a very large company. Okay, let's get back to my question here. What can you do? So the first thing is put builders in charge. Now you may not be able to do this, but get the book to your boss and slip it under the desk or the doors of senior leadership team. Or better yet, mail it anonymously to the board of directors. But you need builders in charge. It doesn't mean we shouldn't do remodeling and look good to investors and do an M&A. Those are wonderful things, but those should be in supporting roles. We need to go back to that founder mentality in charge. I think it's probably overambitious to think somebody who's been decorating for their whole career and has gray hair is going to now all of a sudden be a builder. It could happen. I'm an optimist. But what I would do is I would look for people who have a demonstrated passion to build lasting value. And then let's start measuring success, not just like what did their last tenure do leading this division, because they may have milked it and it may have been the guy or the gal before who really built the business. Okay. So the question is, when you're looking at people for that leadership role, the question is, how will you leave your business stronger than you found it? It's a good interview question. What will you do differently? And then the second thing is, I think it's healthy to build a strategic growth roadmap. What are those capabilities you want to improve? Build it into your strategic plan. I think it's a wise thing to survey the employees and find out what they think. We have a free diagnostic. If you want to run that, let us know. And then the other thing is over time, and maybe we can't do this, at our level, but I think the company needs to attract different investors, ones who are interested in long-term growth. If you do it too soon, it's just going to sound like a story you're telling them. If you do it too late, you've got those wrong investors who are punishing good, right, long-term decisions. But make it a priority. I love this quote by Buffett. Companies obtain the shareholder constituency that they seek and deserve. So don't say, no, my shareholders won't let me do that. Okay, well, listen, that was it. That was a kind of a fast 30 minutes. You guys have been pretty patient. I'll be glad to answer any questions you've got about this and also about the business builder assessment if you've got any questions on how that rascal works. Anybody have any questions or thoughts?
Hey, Dan. Yep.
Yes.
Go ahead, Olaf.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this is Olaf. So thanks first of all for the run through here. Definitely gives some insights on the background of the book and yeah, some motivation to read the book too. But I do have a question under point number 5, initiatives. There was a slide on the questionnaire, I think, where companies invested into initiatives, well, invest into market-facing growth. And
Yes.
I was just wondering, how would you prefer to see those percentages in the 5 areas to be distributed?
Yeah. It's an excellent question, and I don't know the right answer. Let me just go to that slide. This is one I've agonized over a little bit myself. Here we go. This is the one you're referring to right here, correctly? Correct?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. I feel as though it needs to be more on the market-facing innovation than it is. I don't know about the exploratory. I think the exploratory depends very much on the type of industry you're in. But it feels to me, and I have no data to support this at all, Wolf, so I got to be careful about this.
hmm
It feels to me that that's not enough. And I'm not surprised, though, at these results because people don't look at the market-facing innovation differently. Most don't. Builders do, but most don't. They just see it as another initiative. I'm all the time hearing, hey, this year we're really going to go after market-facing innovation. And so I can tell that it's not a primary main thing that they're always focused on. So I don't know what the answer is, but I feel like it should be more than it is. So sorry for that kind of lame answer, but that's kind of where I'm at.
No, that's good enough. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. I think there's another question also we had. Did Alex have one?
Yeah, actually, I have a couple. First of all, some great examples that you showed here. I'm trying to put three questions into one. That might
Oh,
not work.
take your time. Yeah, we
I'll
have
just
time.
start with one observation that I found most interesting, where you compared the GE stock performance when Jack Welch led the company. What
Yeah,
struck me was that you're kind of measuring the success of a builder after he leaves, not what happens during his tenure.
yeah.
And by that measure, Jack Welch doesn't look too good, huh?
No.
That's the point you're making.
Yeah, it's a great point, Alex. Let me just build on that a little bit. You'll read in the book, I interviewed different people, some leaders that I felt were builders. And one of the gentlemen that I interviewed was telling me he'd been there like leading for 7 or 8 years as in the CEO role, and he was getting ready to retire. And his comments were, we are really well positioned. I'm looking forward to what they'll be able to do with this. And we've got this, so they're going to be able to do that. And after we were done with the interview, I thought, how fascinating. This gentleman, his leaving legacy was not crossing a finish line for himself. His legacy was passing the baton on to the next. That's what he was excited about. I think most leaders who maybe are not pure builders, if they were asked at the end of their 7 or 8 10 year tenure to talk about it, they would say, well, here's what we did over the last X years that coincidentally match with their tenure. So I think it is more of that passing the baton and less of I crossed the finish line and now I'm done. Sorry, I just wanted to jump in, but good insight, Alex.
Okay. Well, first question I had is it's actually one on one of your first slides where you compare against competition in order to say
Yes.
a
Yeah.
company was successful or not. Why would you compare growth versus the market a company serves? Isn't that a better indicator?
It probably is, but I felt that the respondents, remember, we were looking at individual contributors and middle management and senior leaders. And I didn't know that all of them would have as good of a sense for what that market was, where
Hmm.
I thought they had probably a better sense for competition. Yeah.
Because it's one of the stumbling blocks I often run into is that internally people always look at how competitors are doing and measuring our own success against that, even
Yeah.
if they know that they're serving at least for a big deal,
Yeah.
for a big part other markets than we. So that's where that measurement
It,
goes wrong,
it's a
actually.
great point. Yeah. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. We over fixate on our competitors.
Yeah.
They may not be doing such hot work themselves. So it's better to talk about what's the market that we're serving? What's it growing? Are we growing faster than that? That sort of thing. It's just that my response, the population I was going to, I didn't think that they would be able to answer that as well. Yeah.
Okay. For the next question, I wanted to kind of sketch the situation that we're in, and it struck me when you talked about lab number 17. Um, uh, would you give up your race just to make lab 17
Oh,
fast?
yeah. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Now, we're in a situation where we, outside of our control, got into the hands of private equity.
yep.
And we know they have an appetite for shorter, relatively short-term financial results, not so much on expanding a company, building it. They want to just increase value and then sell it again at a better price,
Yeah,
and make no secret about that. So
right.
kind of puts us in a difficult situation because if we do not make Lab 17,
Yeah,
uh, we have no control over our destiny at all.
yeah,
So
yep.
that puts us in a specific, difficult spot, I think, and that connects to the last statement from Warren Buffett that you showed.
Hmm.
That may not be true in our scenario. At least I'd like to think it's not true, where you say every company gets the shareholder it deserves or it attracts. Sometimes it is really outside of your control.
Yeah, it's a very, very good point
So
you're
what do you do?
making.
What do you do as a
So,
business confronted with this situation?
yeah, so there's two parts to that. Very insightful on your part, Alex. So I think the first thing Warren Buffett would say is this isn't always true. So I got to be really careful here.
Mm,
When a company ends up being managed by PE, there's a good chance that some mistakes were made before then. Okay, not always. That's not always true. But in what I've seen in many cases, some businesses that weren't performing well were sloughed off by a
mm,
well-run company and they end up in PE. Now, it's not the employee's fault. I mean, that's where it's at. So the real question, which is the one you're asking, is okay, I'm in that situation. What do I do with that? And actually, I ended up working in a company that was sold to private equity. In fact, that executive that I mentioned with the extruder conversation, he was put in there by private equity, and they really wanted to see the results. Now, here's what was, if there's any hope on this thing, here was experience that we had at that firm. And I've also talked to quite a few other people who are run by private equity, and this isn't always the case, but they often say we have a number of years to make this thing work. So
mhm,
it's often, I mean, it could be 5 years, sometimes it's even longer. It may be shorter. But so what I would do in that situation is I would try to understand the private equity. What's the range at which they are intending to sell us? How many years out? And then when I created my growth capabilities map, remember we talked at the very end about how are we going to build capabilities? I would look for the capabilities that I need to grow and hopefully find that there are some capabilities that will be very helpful in that next 5 years that will continue to be helpful after the 5 years. So
mm,
I'm building for myself and my company for the very long term, but I'm also building for the private equity firm. Now, here's the interesting thing about private equity. When they spin that thing, it's not just, let's say it's a 5 year time span. It's not just how did the company perform in year number five, but it's also the story that goes with the results in year number five. So if you've built up an amazing stage gate process, a wonderful pipeline of new products, amazing capabilities on voice of customer, if you've done all these things, and that can be part of the story, but it's real. It's not a fictitious story. It's a real story. And you can demonstrate the growth there. Your PE, private equity firm is going to be pretty happy with that. So it's not necessarily at loggerheads with what you want to do as a builder. Does that make
mhm.
sense?
It does. It does.
Yeah.
I just hope we're getting the time, so we'll have to get our
Right.
refresh.
Yeah.
17
How,
and make it the fastest lap.
how much time we got, boss? Yeah, that's a good point, Alex.
Okay, I
Wonderful point. Thank you.
like. Thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts or observations anybody has?
That's it from
Well,
our end.
it's a fun topic. I think it's really an important topic. Check out that business builder assessment, areyouabusinessbuilder.com, and let me know any thoughts you have, any feedback you have. We just published this thing just a couple months ago, so it's very, very new for us. We're still trying to get the response. I did have one CEO of a $8 billion company said, I want you to speak to my people in Aspen, Colorado later this month. So some people are responding to it. Others are probably stacking them up and lighting them and putting them on fire. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how this goes here. All right. Well, listen, thanks everybody. Hey, Don, good to see you too. Yeah, question or thought? Yeah. Oh, I think you're on mute. But I think,
I am indeed. Thank you very much.
yeah, you bet.
Dan, just a very quick couple of comments, if I may add them in.
Sure.
So first of all, to Alex, great question, great comment. I'm actually just working with a company that's come out of private equity, been bought by a major international industrial company. And the one thing that I'd say there is that the private equity company, with a focus on the results, forced cost reductions, which meant that each of the functions just focused on their own areas, and they're suddenly discovering, like the R&D people are saying, wow, we thought that marketing understood the customers, and with the work that we're doing with them, now we realize they don't. So my advice to Alex would be short term, all the things that you said, Dan, but maybe make sure that communications cross-functionally are working to check out how well you're doing this kind of, outside of the formal structure. How well do you know your customers? How well do your marketing people? How well do your salespeople? So
that's excellent point. Excellent point. Make sure we're reaching across all of these functions to see what they're all doing. We're going to come out of this. How can we come out of it together, and can we be positioned for success?
Right.
I love it.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions?
No, thank you so much. I wanted to say thank you for organizing this.
Thanks, Emily. Good to see you again. Well, you all have a good rest of the day, and Happy New Year. I think I can say that one more time. All right.
Why not?
Okay. Bye-bye now.